Marcus Thompson pushed his cleaning cart down the marble hallway of Sterling Financial Tower, the wheels squeaking softly against the polished floor. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the empty offices. Most employees had gone home hours ago, but Marcus preferred working the evening shift. It meant he could pick up his 8-year-old daughter Emma from school and spend the afternoon with her before heading to work. The 35-year-old man paused outside the executive conference room, checking his watch. 6:30. The board meeting should have ended by now, but he could still hear voices inside. He decided to wait, settling onto a nearby bench with a quiet sigh. The day had been long, and his back ached from hours of mopping, vacuuming, and emptying trash bins. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about Emma. She had been asking about piano lessons again at dinner. Her music teacher at school had mentioned that Emma showed real talent, but lessons were expensive. Even with his second job on weekends doing landscaping, money was always tight. Ever since his wife Sarah had passed away 3 years ago, Marcus had struggled to make ends meet while being both mother and father to Emma. The conference room doors finally opened, and a stream of well-dressed executives emerged, their voices echoing in the hallway. Marcus recognized several faces, including Mr. Richard Sterling himself, the company's CEO. The distinguished man with silver hair was known for his sharp business sense and, unfortunately, his impatience with staff who didn't meet his exacting standards. Marcus waited until the group had passed before entering the conference room with his supplies. The room was in its usual post-meeting chaos. Coffee cups sat abandoned on the massive mahogany table, papers were scattered about, and someone had spilled water near the presentation screen. He worked methodically, wiping down surfaces and straightening chairs. As he cleaned, Marcus noticed the grand piano in the corner of the room. It was a beautiful Steinway, black as midnight and polished to perfection. He had always wondered why such an expensive instrument sat in a conference room, barely noticed by the executives who rushed through their meetings. Emma would have been amazed by it. She played on an old keyboard at home, its keys yellowed with age and several notes that stuck. Marcus approached the piano carefully, running his fingers along its smooth surface. He pressed one key gently, and a pure, clear note filled the room. It had been so long since he had played on a real piano. Back in high school, before life had taken unexpected turns, he had been quite talented. His music teacher had even suggested he pursue it in college, but then Sarah had gotten pregnant with Emma, and priorities had shifted. He was so lost in the memory that he didn't hear the footsteps behind him until a voice made him jump. "What do you think you're doing?" Marcus spun around to find Mr. Sterling standing in the doorway, his eyes cold and disapproving. Behind him stood several other executives who had apparently returned for something they had forgotten. "I'm sorry, sir," Marcus stammered, backing away from the piano. "I was just cleaning and decided to help yourself to our instrument." Mr. Sterling's voice was sharp. "Do you have any idea how much that piano is worth?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "No sir, I wasn't, I was just." "Robert," one of the other executives said with a chuckle, "maybe our janitor here thinks he's some kind of pianist. Probably learned to play chopsticks on YouTube." The group laughed, and Marcus felt his dignity crumble. He had faced this kind of dismissal before, the assumption that because he cleaned buildings, he couldn't possibly have any other talents or education. It stung every time, but he needed this job. Emma needed this job. Mr. Sterling studied Marcus for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "You know what? I'm curious now. Since you seem so drawn to our piano, why don't you play something for us? Consider it entertainment." The other executives murmured their amusement, clearly expecting a spectacle. Marcus looked at their faces, seeing the mixture of condescension and anticipation. They wanted him to fail, to confirm their assumptions about who he was and what he was capable of. For a moment, Marcus considered declining, making an excuse about needing to finish his cleaning. But then he thought about Emma, about all the times she had asked him to play for her at home. He thought about Sarah, who had always believed in his music even when he had stopped believing in it himself. And something inside him, something that had been quiet for years, suddenly stirred to life. "All right," Marcus said quietly, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'll play something." He walked back to the piano bench and sat down slowly. His hands trembled slightly as he placed them on the keys. The executives gathered behind him, some checking their phones, others whispering among themselves. They were expecting a joke, a few clumsy notes that would give them something to laugh about over drinks. Marcus closed his eyes and let his mind drift back 20 years, to a high school recital where he had played this same piece. His fingers found their positions on the keys, muscle memory awakening after years of dormancy. He took a deep breath and began to play. The opening notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the room like liquid gold. Slow and haunting, the melody seemed to transform the sterile conference room into something sacred. Marcus's fingers moved across the keys with surprising grace, each note deliberate and filled with emotion he had kept buried for too long. The executives fell silent. As the piece continued, Marcus lost himself in the music. He thought about Sarah, about the way she used to hum along when he played for her in their tiny apartment. He thought about Emma's face when she watched him play their old keyboard, her eyes wide with wonder. He thought about dreams deferred but not forgotten, about the music that lived inside him despite everything life had thrown his way. The melody swelled and receded like ocean waves, carrying with it all the love and loss and hope that Marcus had carried alone for so long. His fingers danced across the keys with increasing confidence, and the piano responded like an old friend welcoming him home. In the audience, Mr. Sterling stood transfixed. He had studied piano himself as a child, had even considered a career in music before business school had called. He recognized not just technical skill in Marcus's playing, but something deeper. This wasn't just someone who had learned to play piano. This was someone who understood music, who could speak its language fluently and with profound emotion. As the piece reached its climax, Marcus opened his eyes briefly and saw the faces around him. The mockery was gone, replaced by something like awe. Mrs. Jennifer Walsh, the company's normally stern CFO, had tears streaming down her cheeks. Even the youngest executive, Thomas Kim, who usually couldn't sit still for 5 minutes, stood completely motionless. The final notes of the nocturne hung in the air like a prayer before slowly fading into silence. Marcus sat quietly for a moment, his hands still resting on the keys, before turning to face his unexpected audience. Mr. Sterling's eyes were bright with unshed tears. He cleared his throat twice before he could speak. He paused, searching for words. That was extraordinary. Where did you learn to play like that? Marcus stood up slowly, suddenly aware of his work uniform, of the cleaning cart waiting in the hallway. High school, he said simply. And some college before life happened. Before life happened, Mr. Sterling repeated softly. He looked at Marcus with new eyes, seeing past the janitor's uniform to the man beneath. Do you have children? A daughter, Marcus replied. Emma. She's 8. She wants to take piano lessons, but... He didn't finish the sentence, but everyone in the room understood. Mr. Sterling was quiet for a long moment, his mind working. Finally, he spoke. Marcus Thompson, isn't it? I know we have your employee file, but I suspect there's a lot it doesn't tell us. Marcus nodded, unsure where this was leading. We've been looking for someone to teach piano to employees' children, Mr. Sterling continued, though this wasn't entirely true. The idea had just formed in his mind. A music program for our company families. Would you be interested in running it? The position would come with a significant salary increase and benefits that would certainly cover piano lessons for your daughter. The other executives looked surprised but said nothing. They had all been moved by what they had just witnessed, and they trusted their CEO's judgment. Marcus felt the room spin slightly. Sir, are you serious? Quite serious. You have a rare gift, Marcus. It would be a shame to waste it pushing a mop around our building, no matter how thoroughly you clean our floors. Mrs. Walsh stepped forward. My daughter is 7, she said quietly. She's been begging for piano lessons too. I think Mr. Sterling's idea is wonderful. Other executives began to nod and murmur their agreement. Marcus looked around the room at these people who, just minutes ago, had been ready to mock him. Now they were offering him a chance at a completely different life. There's just one condition, Mr. Sterling added with a slight smile. You'll need to perform at our annual charity gala next month. We always feature musical entertainment, and after hearing you play, I can't imagine having anyone else. Marcus thought about Emma, about being able to afford not just piano lessons but maybe even a real piano for their apartment. He thought about having a job that honored both his need to provide for his family and his love of music. Most of all, he thought about Sarah, and how proud she would have been to see this moment. "Yes, sir," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I would be honored, Mr." Sterling extended his hand, and Marcus shook it firmly. Around them, the other executives smiled, some still wiping their eyes. As the group finally departed for the evening, Marcus remained alone in the conference room with the piano. He sat back down at the bench and began to play again, this time something soft and joyful. The notes seemed to carry his gratitude up to the ceiling and beyond. Tomorrow, he would call Emma and tell her that not only would she be getting those piano lessons, but that Daddy had some wonderful news to share. Tomorrow, he would begin a new chapter in their lives, one filled with music and possibility. For tonight, though, he simply played, letting the piano sing the song of second chances and dreams that refuse to die. In the empty conference room of Sterling Financial Tower, a janitor had become a musician again, and nothing would ever be quite the same. The cleaning cart sat forgotten in the hallway, its work complete in more ways than one.